everybody wants to do fantastic work, ship it as soon as possible, and then iterate to greatness from there.
You got to be the most critical person of your own product to succeed, because if you're not critical of it, that means you don't care.
Vercel has been growing super fast from what I'm hearing. How was your experience of being a design engineer in a growing organization? I imagine, I'm not exactly sure if it's actually accurate, but it seems like one of the core principles of Vercel is shipping fast, right? They like to move fast. And with design, it's kind of tricky. How do you measure design performance beyond, I don't know, lighthouse scores or whatever front engineers would care about on these landing pages?
Definitely. I'd say more than anything else, like especially around like craft at Vercel, I think there's like a cool general understanding that like everybody here wants to do great work and they're all here. And I think because of that, then there's like a level of understanding between designers and engineers that design engineers can say, like, there's definitely engineers. It's like, no, don't let them like ship front end. Design engineering to like brand design more than anything else. You see like a really cool exchange of like both working together, and if somebody has an idea for something, like it's probably a really good idea, whether it's from the brand team or whether it's from the design engineering team. And really like one of the first places I feel like I've worked at a company at scale where everybody in the room is an expert and fantastic at what they do. I loved DigitalOcean. I really did. But as I said, there were a lot of folks coming over from like very, very enterprise companies, just kind of like there for the IPO. And, you know, not always like exactly the vibe. Whereas here, like everybody's super startup-y and everybody wants to do fantastic work, ship it like as soon as possible, and then like iterate to greatness from there.
This is awesome. This is actually one of those things that companies start to lose at that scale. So that's exciting to hear.
I commend G and like everybody, like Evil and everybody who's been there since the beginning. I mean, that's another thing at DigitalOcean, like our CEO came from Twilio. I think we had 2 or 3 CEOs before he got there. And I mean, he brought over a bunch of folks from Twilio, and it was very much so like the old DigitalOcean culture died out with that. Whereas I was talking to Evil the other day, and it's fantastic that you're here, because I think like there's a reason that like even back in the Byte days to like now in the, 10 years later Vercel days, that there's still such a high bar for quality in design that, at this scale, I mean, Vercel was like maybe 100 people, a handful of years ago. And now with the scale we're at this point, that bar still remains. And that's insane. Like I'd say companies that come close to that, like look at Linear. Linear is like 60 people though, not nearly the same size. It's just fantastic seeing that culture remain over time.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful and grounding for a company. If it's like that core environment persists and it's persisted for so long, so it kind of makes you feel like, okay, we're not going to have any dramatic shifts because you've gone through a lot of dramatic changes already and it's still stayed the same. So yeah, I do think that that's super helpful. Obviously, when you ship something, and since you're shipping fast, you don't really have a lot of time. How do you decide what gets the extra step and the extra moments of polish? Is there something where you're like, the type must always be correct, the logos must always be correct, the aesthetics must always be correct? How do you evaluate that?
I'd say more than anything else, what I love about Vercel is that they are like that hands-on with craft. And I feel like it has to come from the top more than anything else. If it's just coming from like, oh, the design team wants design to be right, it's great. But the second you go upstairs and like, marketing, product ownership, whatever it is like, hey, feature's done, ready to put it out now. They don't care upstairs if that's the way that the culture is at the company. And they're like, yeah, okay, great. Put it out, start working on whatever's next. Great. Way to go. You did it. Whereas like at Vercel, like G is like in the trenches with us, calling things out and being like, hey, this type doesn't look right. Or like, I'm not really sure how we're feeling on this animation. Or like, especially if there's ever like a flash of unstyled content or something, it's like down to like that much nuance. And I think it just has to be that way. I think back to like, it's like a stupid like side story, but if you ever listen to like Jerry Seinfeld's talk about how he and Larry David created Seinfeld and like why it was so good for so long compared to a lot of other shows that got very soupy over the years and kind of like characters become caricatures of themselves and like you kind of lose the plot and like it just gets boring and they end up either getting canceled or like having, you know, a really bad ending. He always talks about Seinfeld, but the reason it's so good is because Larry and I were just like right there scrutinizing every single point of that show. And I think it has to be that way to some degree. Kari is CEO of Linear. He talks about that concept all the time too. I did a little bit of work with Linear a couple of years ago. And same concept, like he's right there with them. If they're going to put out something visual or like, you know, not even visual, it could be down to like tone of voice and like, does that match the brand? Like, is how we're talking about a feature or how we're talking with customers, does that make sense for us? And I think like you just have to like really scrutinize the details to get that right.
Yeah, you got to be the most critical person of your own product to succeed, because if you're not critical of it, that means you don't care. I mean, it doesn't mean, but it usually means that you're not really like in tune with it anymore. And if you're not in tune with it, then you kind of lose all momentum with it. So if you're always critical and you're always pushing to make your product better, then that really, really helps a brand or a company.
Absolutely. I think too, last point on this, that at Vercel, there's like so little ego that I think is super cool, especially in design. Like we all call each other out for stuff all the time and it helps all the time. Like I think that's something that they try to teach people, especially in design school more than anything else, is like, be super critical and like give honest feedback. You know, don't just kind of like beat around the bush with this kind of stuff. And, you know, for as much as you can kind of like teach it and say it in those days, it's like very few people feel like actually do that. And I feel like it kind of leads to like a lot of lukewarm careers, but those that do continue to do it and continue to better themselves professionally and put themselves in uncomfortable situations where people are regularly giving feedback, that's how you get the best.